start and end on time. So I'm going to just say hello and welcome. I'm Jack Murphy. I am the chair of the North Fulton Improvement Network, which used to be called the North Fulton Poverty Task Force. We thank you for joining us today for this critical conversation on as part of our child well-being effort. The task force, the network has been around for about 5 years, and we are a group of business, nonprofit, faith, and community leaders that are working to raise the information, the data level, if you will, of those that are financially vulnerable in North Fulton County. And so we thank you for joining us. I'm going to turn it right over to Megan and let her take it from here.
Thanks, Jack. And thank you everyone for being here. I just wanted to take a couple minutes to introduce our panelists and our moderator, and then we can get right into the conversation. Joining us, we have Stephanie Blank, who is the board chair of GEEARS, the Georgia Early Education Alliance for Ready Students. She's also the founder and president of the Nazarian Foundation, which focuses on early education, child health, and other issues impacting children ages birth to 5. Mindy Binderman is the founding executive director of GEEARS, where she leads efforts to provide and inspire leadership for a statewide movement here in Georgia on early learning and healthy development for the same age group of children ages birth to 5. Maggie DeCan is the CEO and executive director of the Children's Development Academy. It is here in Roswell, which provides affordable early learning programs and childcare for preschool children. Prior to the CDA, she joined in 2016. She served as president and COO of the Honey Baked Ham National System. Michele Harris is the manager of work-life services for Wellstar Health System. There, she's responsible for the oversight of all the on-site childcare facilities, childcare resources and support, all the backup care and childcare and elder care resources, tuition reimbursement, other programs, reward and recognition and whatnot that they offer for their employees. And our moderator is Christy Merritt. She's the director of programs at the Drake House, which provides housing and education programs for homeless single mothers in the North Metro Atlanta area. She has been there for several years, since 2005, and there she's created and manages all the program components and service delivery processes and accommodations. And we are so excited to have everyone here. Christy is going to kick us off, and then at the end, we will have some Q&A, but I will let her explain that as well. Thank you again, everyone.
Thanks, Megan. We are so thrilled to have all of you with us this morning and to have this topic at the forefront of the advocacy efforts of this very important group. And we are most gratified to have our panelists who all are subject matter experts in the area of child well-being, which is the topic of this committee's presentation. So we'll kick it off this morning with Stephanie Blank. And please, we would like you to hold questions to the chat box, and we will have those at the end of the presentations. But we do want to hear your questions. They're very important to the presentation. And so I will be monitoring that and look forward to sharing those with our panelists at the end of their presentation. Thank you. Stephanie?
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you to the North Fulton Improvement. I'm leaving out the P. North Fulton Improvement, what's the P?
Network.
Network. For having us this morning, and I did want to add that I have my honey baked ham order already in for Thanksgiving as well. But I'm going to kick us off this morning by talking a little bit about brain development in our youngest learners. And so I hope everybody can put on their science hat for a few minutes. If you've already heard or feel like you know about brain development, hopefully we'll give you some new language to talk about it with other people. So we're gonna jump right in with one of my favorite slides to illustrate some of these issues around early childhood. And that's the 2 pots you see on your screen. They're identical pots planted with an identical flower. If I was more of a gardener, I would know what flower that is, but I'm not. So what's the difference between those two? It's all in how they were nurtured. So they were planted into the same pot, into the same soil, but there was a difference in how those plants were, if you will, raised. One was given fertilizer, it was talked to, it was weeded out, it was watered when there was not enough rain, it was tended to. And you can see the effects of what tending to a plant does in very graphic terms between the plant that's on your right and the plant that's on your left. And our children are very, very much the same way. We oftentimes, I think in the past, have thought that whatever genes that we are born with is how, you know, it's going to shape how we turn out. What we know now, and the exploding field of epigenetics, tells us that it's not all nature, that it is in fact a combination of nature and nurture. And so the genes that we carry inside of all of us, the expression of those genes is greatly impacted on what happens in our environment. Just like these plants that were planted, they carried the gene to flower. But as you can see, whether or not they reached their full potential depended on who the gardener was. And so that sounds great for plants, but what about for children? Well, the next slide shows, this is a 3-year-old child, well, it's 2 3-year-old children. These are their brain scans. And one shows what happens with extreme neglect, and the other shows what happens with normal human interactions. And what's important to note about this is not only is the brain smaller, it has atrophied, it also has far greater dark spaces where that, where the neural connectivity, where the actual brain matter did not develop as fully as it could have had it been in an environment that was rich and sustaining. And so this is a very graphic portrayal of 2 3-year-olds and the extreme differences that can exist simply because of the environment in which they are being raised. This has nothing to do with genetics. This is simply due to what happens when children feel the effects of neglect. So why does this happen? This next slide that you're going to see shows neural connections, and the neural connections in our brain, if we think about them kind of like as a roadway system, they are carrying information from place to place within the brain so that we can respond appropriately and in a timely fashion to whatever is going on in our environment. And as you can see, when you are first born, there's a limited number of those neural connections, but by the time you get to be about 2 years of age, there's a whole lot of them. And what causes that? Well, any experience that a child feels, sees, hears, tastes, touch, even emotions, cause this information kind of highway in the brain to light up. And this is happening at such an amazingly rapid speed. In fact, it's about 1 million per second. That's like as fast as supercomputers. And in fact, that's in many ways what a brain is like. It's this supercomputer that's taking in and processing all this information. It's creating all these neural networks to all these important parts of the brain to connect this all together so that we become healthy, functioning, eventually adults. But another key piece of this neural connectivity part is what's called pruning. And I go back to the gardening analysis. For those of you who have done any gardening, you know how important it can be to prune a plant so that anything that's not healthy to the plant or not necessary to the plant gets trimmed away. And it continues to grow in a healthy manner. The brain does the same thing. With all of these million per second neural connections being made, all this synaptic firing, the brain would be overloaded eventually. It would be just too much in there. So the brain, and its remarkableness, does this process of pruning, where it looks at the patterns, the pathways that have been repeatedly fired over and over and over, and it starts to lay down permanent, like concrete highways of those pathways. This is all great and wonderful if a child is receiving all the things that our children need to receive in order to be healthy and emotionally and physically healthy young people. If they are getting all of that, then it lays down healthy neural connectivity highways that allow them to fully function the way they should. Unfortunately, not all of our children receive that. So if you looked back at the slide with the brain development, and you don't have to go back, well, it's okay. So that child was not getting all that neural connectivity. And what happens if the brain thinks, I don't need that highway because it's not being used, it will actually trim that away. Even if it's something that you need in order to be a responsive, caring, loving, well-adapted child. So in the instance of this child who had extreme neglect, that neural pathway to attachment, to where they can form loving, responsive relationships with other people in their life, that may not have been laid down as a concrete highway because of that neglect. After about age 8, because the brain really has a lot of growth between birth and age 8, it's very, 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 very difficult to undo some of the damage that can be done in those formative years. The brain is plastic. It doesn't mean that all hope is lost, but it does mean that it becomes exceedingly difficult, and sometimes permanent damage can be done with these children. And if Mindy goes forward to the ACEs, and so why does this happen? Well, we now know that children who experience a lot of what are called adverse childhood events, or ACEs for short, if they are repeatedly experiencing a lot of these factors in their lives, a lot of these, they can be kind of micro traumas or they can be much larger traumas. But if this continues to happen over and over in their lifetime, it greatly impacts their ability to form stable relationships, to do well in school, to become positive functioning adults in society. It even impacts our health later. And if you look at the 3 realms of the ACEs that are on this slide, we often think about just the immediate household. So if mom and dad had a very difficult divorce, or if there's domestic violence, physical, emotional neglect, anything like that, we tend to understand that. But what we are now recognizing is that what's happening in the broader environment and community also has great impact on our children. So if we think about what's been happening just within the last several months in our own country, you think about the fires in California, where kids, simply unsafe to go outside. They would look across the hills and see fires coming towards them. This creates a tremendous amount of stress in a child. If we look at the community, if we look at poverty, if we look at structural racism, if we look at what's happening around the social justice unrest, it can create, while it's all for a positive cause, it can create fear in children. So when you add all 3 of these realms of ACEs together, we have a lot of children who are living in situations where they are facing repeated and constant stress in their lives, which is a term that has been coined toxic stress. And what we know about the toxic stress is that it permanently can alter the physical composition of the body. It chemically imprints on the body, and these effects are felt not only in childhood, but into adulthood with chronic disease. But for those of you who are working with younger children, there's some interesting studies that have just come out that say that up to, if you have a child who's experiencing 4 or more ACEs, almost half of those children will have some form of what is being probably diagnosed as a developmental delay. It has significant impacts on their ability to learn and to grow. So if we go to the next slide, I know I've presented a lot of information that sounds kind of dire. And in this time of COVID, we have even more children who are living under great stress. Their families are living under great stress. We know that domestic violence has been on the rise. We are seeing signs that physical and emotional abuse of children is also on the rise. Unfortunately, we've lost a lot of our mandatory reporters for child abuse because of schools being closed, after school programs being closed, kids not going to sports programs the same way they have been. So we know that children are under stress because anytime that the crisis hotlines for domestic violence are increasing by up to 50%, then we know families are in stress as well. So what can we do about this? And this is, where great high quality childcare becomes a part of the solution for not only economic reasons. And Mindy can talk a little bit about why this is so important, for the workforce and our families, but it's also so critical for our children. Because in the face of all of this, if children can spend hours a day in a healthy, stable, nurturing, experience-rich environment, it can be enough to offset a lot of the dysfunction they may be experiencing in their home life. And it's not a solution for what is happening within their home life. And we need to do a better job at supporting families, which is another place where the workplace can come in. But it can be enough to help buffer some of those effects. And there are many young people that I speak with who will say, looking back on their life, it was a particular teacher or a caregiver who really made the difference in how they eventually experienced their belief in themselves and how they were able to overcome some of their obstacles. So we absolutely know that high quality childcare that is done with caring, loving, knowledgeable adults is critical in this day and age. And even more so in this time of COVID, when parents are struggling with so many other factors that we could have, never anticipated. So I know I've thrown a lot out there about kind of the brain development, but I hope it illustrates why it's so critical. We don't get a redo of this time period in a child's life, but there are amazing, wonderful solutions out there that if we all come together and make this a priority for our children, we can really change the trajectory and the outcome that they have in their lives. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mindy and let her talk a little bit about these children's families and what can be done to help them and why we need to do that as well.
Good morning, everybody. I hope everyone is well. Good morning. As Stephanie said, I love her slide on ACEs because it shows the importance of a strong community and family to child well-being. And we know that one of the things that impacts child well-being and the economy and strong communities is parents' ability to work. Especially now, families depend on dual income earners to make ends meet. There have been studies that have shown that since 2015, a key driver of economic growth in the US has been women in the workplace, educated women. That's how employers can continue expanding as well. And so we know that childcare is an important part of all of that. In 2018, GEEARS and the Metro Atlanta Chamber did a study that we called Opportunities Lost, where we tried to quantify the impact to Georgia's economy of childcare challenges to families of kids birth to 5. And we know that childcare challenges affect parents' participation in the workforce in a variety of ways. And in our survey, we found that more than 1 in 5 of Georgia's parents with kids under 5 indicated that they had quit a job, quit school, or a work training program due to childcare issues. More than 1 in 6 turned down a promotion. We know that parents miss days of work, school, and work training because of childcare challenges as well. That all adds up to real impacts in Georgia's economy. As a matter of fact, this was in a good economy. In a good economy, the economists from Metro Atlanta Chamber in our study found that those childcare challenges lead up to $1.75 billion of losses in Georgia annually, and an additional $105 million in lost tax revenue. That's tremendous. It means that families can't go to work, businesses can't hire, kids don't live in stable families. That's where families that are economically stable. That leads to issues with housing costs, so it's not just those long-term education outcomes of kids that are so important, but it's also that they're living in families that are unstable due to loss of jobs. And this is, again, before the COVID crisis. And so GEEARS and the Metro Atlanta Chamber set out to see what we could do about that and what was being done now or at that time in our businesses so that we could then take and show. So we did a video that I'm going to share with you guys because I think sometimes talking heads aren't as effective as real people. So I'm going to show you this video and then share a little bit more context about COVID-19 before I end. So hopefully this is going to work. Give me 1 minute.
We want the best and brightest in this market. And in order to get them, we not only have to have the good jobs, we have to have a great quality of life.
We have an obligation to our employees to make sure that we are able to provide for them, not just inside the workplace, but outside of the workplace.
It's got to be about the employee. It has to be about us centralizing some of the benefits for them that help make them productive, but also make them active and vibrant.
Sorry, you can't see it? Is that the challenge?
Correct.
Okay, sorry, let me see if I can, it's weird. Okay, I'm gonna share it again and let's see.
Oh, we've got it now, Mindy.
Okay.
Vibrant citizens.
When employers engage in thoughtful, family-friendly policies, there's a lot of different positive aspects that come out of it.
You're going to have productive employees. You're going to be able to recruit employees better. You're going to have more retention of employees. You're going to be able to bring women back into the workforce. And all of these things create happy employees and really, at the end of the day, drive innovation and economic growth.
We hope that business leaders will consider really a range of family-friendly policies or practices that they can implement that feel right to them and their employees.
The lifestyle of our employees, it's very different from years past. A lot of our employees are not only young with child, they might be relatively young and caretakers of elderly parents.
The flexible work hours, it really means a lot when you have children.
Some of the policies we've enacted is really a flexible work schedule, teleworking, as well as being able to work anywhere, anytime around our building. We want you to be able to balance work and life, but more importantly, we want you to be as successful in both things. The job for us at the end of the day is to ensure that we're doing everything possible to provide for our employees so that they can provide for those that they love and care for.
The parental leave policy is one of many programs that we provide that helps the employee feel like they are able to embrace their whole human self here at work. The policy at Sales Loft includes a full 12 weeks of pay for all mothers and a full 6 weeks of pay for all fathers. We really wanted to make sure that we were inclusive for fathers to be able to have that time with their newborns. We wanted to include an entire year's worth of diapers. We also include meal service for the 12 weeks that somebody's on leave. And we also include maid service for 12 weeks, as well as a 4-week transition period for all parents coming back. We've seen that we've had an increase in employee engagement, in particular those that are going through and able to utilize the program. They feel that they're being supported by Sales Loft, even when they're not physically working here, because we're allowing that time for them to bond as a family.
One of my favorite features is when you have places like the Atlanta Technical Colleges, Home Depot, Chick-fil-A, places like that that have the on-site childcare, because I can't think of anything more comforting for a parent than to know that your baby, your toddler, your young child is right down the hall or nearby. And some of these programs are really top-notch.
We do have an on-site childcare facility. The pressure of getting away from the office to pick up your child, the pressure of getting into the office after you drop them off, that's all been relieved.
If they feel their children are safe and happy, then they're going to be productive.
The business community and businesses in general can play a really important role in this work, both because they can help their own employees through family-friendly workplace practices, but also because they have a voice at the state capitol and in their city councils and at a federal level as well. And we need them to use their voice.
Companies have an opportunity to play a really key leadership role in family-friendly policies.
It's something I say to my team all the time. This isn't just about one employee. This is about the employee and their network that goes far and wide. And in that case, you know, we are talking about kids that they get a chance to raise, but just as important, kids that will eventually be my employees or kids that I might work for.
There are a number of other companies that already engage in these policies in different ways. And there are good partners like GEEARS and the Metro Chamber that can help guide them along the way.
It doesn't matter the number of employees that a company has currently. It can be considered a small company, a startup, or a large organization.
It really is just about being thoughtful and working together with your employees and realizing that one solution isn't going to work for everybody.
Are the decisions easy? No, they're not. But when you start putting yourself in the shoes of the individuals that you serve, it becomes much easier.
If we get this right, we are going to have employees today who are able to go into their workplaces and focus on their jobs and not worry about their kids who are back in high-quality childcare.
These family-friendly policies play a huge role in what that story is and how it will play out, and the leaders in our companies have a role to play in that story.
So now, with the double challenge that the pandemic has brought on our economy, families, particularly women, are losing jobs at the same time where many of them are forced to make different decisions, but either childcare has closed in some cases and many of their kids are learning remotely. And studies have shown that this could limit particularly women's job prospects and their earnings over a lifetime, and it could stunt our national growth. 1/3 currently of working women who are currently unemployed said that their unemployment was because of lack of childcare. 1/3 of women. That compares to 12% of men. So men also have some childcare issues, but really women are leaving the workforce either because of job loss or because they've have to make different decisions while their children are learning remotely. And so again, many of these, once again, we're going to look to businesses and communities to step up and help these families. I just have a couple of quick slides to show on what we found as we surveyed families about the choices that they've had to make due to the crisis. We surveyed families, and they have shown in Georgia that they've experienced significant disruptions to their employment and childcare situations. 83% of respondents said that they either strongly or agreed with the statement that COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted my home and family life. I'm sure that we all have had that experience, right? Over half of the respondents, though, said that they have experienced job loss or a furlough or a reduction of pay in hours. We also have seen that families' childcare arrangements look strikingly different than they did before the pandemic. Before March 13th, about 70% of respondents in our survey said that their kids were in some kind of childcare situation outside the home. In June, when we did this survey, the numbers flipped. Only 12% of the respondents of the survey said that their children were cared for outside the home. 60% were caring for their children at home. That's a tremendous difference. And while we know that enrollment in childcare has increased over the summer, it's still not at 100%. We know that families are making major adjustments. Many of them have changed their hours, alternated work, or even given up a job or taken paid or unpaid leave. Those are challenges that families in our communities in North Fulton face today. We also know that families, because of all these issues, are certainly indicating that their stress levels are higher, and we know that that impacts children. Now, businesses have stepped up. For example, at Defense Storm, Gas South, and MailChimp, they've increased availability and use of flexible work hours. At BlackRock, they're offering 60 days of backup childcare and online activities for children. Some companies are increasing paid family leave. Mercedes-Benz has increased that paid family leave from 3 weeks to 6 weeks. Others like Truist offer free online tutoring services and partner for backup childcare as well. And Bank of America has reimbursed childcare costs and also increased backup childcare and expanded partnerships with online providers. There's a lot more that we can be doing as a community to support families today as they're addressing the pandemic, but also the needs, their childcare needs as the economy gets back on track and it's safe to go back to business as usual. Frankly, families can't afford business as usual. We have got to work now to address these childcare issues so we build back stronger in the future. And so I thank you and look forward to the discussion.
Thank you so much, both Stephanie and Mindy. Such staggering statistics and such important research for us to really understand the depth and breadth of early child care and quality care for children. We have Maggie DeCan, Executive Director of the Child Development Association, to tell us a little bit more about this topic and to share with us resources that are available for those who are struggling financially to both meet basic needs and provide important care for their children as well. Maggie?
Thank you, Christy. That was such a great discussion. And one of the things, I wish this group size was doubled and there weren't so many members of the choir on, because a lot of us here are very passionate about this topic, but I'm loving that it's going to be recorded and posted. And if we all could just take that link and share it with 5 members of the business community in their not 10 a.m. in the morning, but 10 p.m. at night when they're still working, maybe they could tune in and get some of this great information. The CDA, the Children's Development Academy, is over 50 years old. It was founded in 1968 when a young child, can everybody see the screen? I guess you would have told me, right? Okay, thanks. I see Christy nodding. A young child in the Groveway district of Roswell died of malnutrition, starvation. And it's kind of disheartening that poverty is only slightly more visible now than it was then. The citizens of Roswell were ashamed and shocked that they had such poverty in their midst, and a group of concerned citizens in a time much like this, where social justice and equity issues were top of mind in the late 60s, got together and decided they were really visionaries. About the same time that Head Start was being launched in Washington, the CDA was launched in Roswell. And it was designed to ensure that the children of the Groveway, which was a heavily African-American community where families that generations ago had been slaves that had been freed, settled. But now the CDA serves children from across North Fulton County. We have almost equal number of students from Hispanic families and African-American families and other cultures represented. And it's really, if you look at 50 years of Roswell having affordable childcare, I can tell you that there have been many times where Roswell North Elementary, which used to be the feeder school for a large number of our students, and Roswell High School have been cited for achieving beyond the expectations. So basically you look at their demographics, their number of free and reduced lunch, and you see that their SAT scores are higher, their reading levels are higher. And one of that reasons has to be, in my opinion, even though I have no deep research, that we have had 150 affordable spots for children to attend high quality early education from, at one point it was 6 weeks, now we serve from 1 year through pre-K. I will tell you, we closed on March 13th and we reopened on June 13th, or 15th, excuse me. And one of our biggest issues that we had to personally solve was that our teachers had children at home. And so we had to step up and kind of drink our own Kool-Aid and provide childcare to our teachers until the schools opened. And if we wanted our employees to come back to work and not be stressed or deal with less than ideal solutions, we had to do that as well. We do have some government funding. We have 3 classes of Georgia pre-K, and we take advantage of all of the programs out there like CAPS and in the past quality rated subsidy grants. But those who pay about $65 to $95 a week per child, compared to down the street, the non-NACE accredited, non-Georgia 3-star quality rated, which we are, have anywhere between $300 and $350 a week. So if you haven't paid for childcare lately, you don't know how expensive it is, basically it's a mortgage on a monthly basis. Right now we have about 102 kids. So when you announced that only 12% of all children have returned back to their centers, we certainly are feeling that as well. Our center director is on the call, and I know she's going to come upstairs and tell me to stop complaining about enrollment because we're doing pretty well at 100. But we do have spots, and we are letting people in off the wait list. So if you know people who are looking for high quality childcare, we're here. Our parents tell us that the 3 hurdles to using us are cost, which we address pretty easily, transportation, which is a huge challenge, and hours. The ideal situation would be for us to have a lot more 24-hour care in our community, because people don't work 9 to 5, and 60% of all jobs can't be done remotely. There was a recent webinar that said that 25% of all the centers that were open pre-COVID have not reopened. So there's going to be a huge shortage of high quality childcare once the economy does get back into place and hopefully the vaccine gets out. We are NACE accredited in Georgia, 3-star quality rated. We have 3 Georgia pre-Ks, a wonderful board, and lots of opportunities for the community to intersect with us. One of the things that I like to share is these slides. When people think about children staying at home, they get this image of Ozzie and Harriet's down on the floor playing blocks with her child, but that's actually not true. Affordable home care often looks like a neighbor or a grandparent, and it's usually a lot of screen time versus play and creative learning and the things that build those neural connectors. So when you think about children staying at home, it's one thing to stay at home with a parent who's highly involved in their learning and building those neural pathways. It's another to stay at home with 5 or 6 neighbor kids who are watching Clifford all day. So one of the things that we like to advocate for is universal preschool. We have a huge need. The Georgia Lottery only funds about 40% of the spots that could be utilized every year by children. And right now, I think they're looking for places to open classrooms. Another possibility would be to focus on at-risk children. I used to be one of those people who would say, oh no, the lottery's funded by everybody. It has to go to everybody. But honestly, our society, our community would be so much better off if we took those spots for those who really can't afford other options. And the biggest objection is cost. We have to decide, are our children worth the investment? So I would tell for business leaders who are on here, not only does it help your workers now, in 15 short years, these might be your employees, and they're going to be better educated and have better all around social, emotional, intellectual gifts to bring to your business if they've had high quality early education. Don't need to repeat all of these wonderful things that Mindy and Stephanie covered. But what can you do? We can all become ambassadors for early education and affordable care. Start conversations. Did you know? Can you share what you learned today? Support early education advocates on social media. Advocate for funding for high quality early education. When the casino legalization conversation happens, make sure that you're pushing for funding for high quality early education to be part of that. Know your own local numbers, work with your local schools to get ahead of their kindergarten. And of course, support the CDA or another high quality center, and advocate for involvement by your company through on-site initiatives, tax credits, or other means. I don't want to take up too much of everybody else's time, but we are all, my board chairs on this call, and I will probably get fired if I don't ask you to consider supporting the CDA or somebody else. I'm just kidding, Catherine. The CDA or somebody else in your community, work with them as a partner. And then provide employees with information about high quality early education and how to be a parent teacher, promote breastfeeding solutions in your company, provide subsidies or support your local high quality early education provider. You talked about offer flexible schedules, provide paid family leave. I got a text from Catherine. We both want to go to work for Sales Loft and have a do-over with our children. It's amazing. And don't forget the role of fathers, which it sounds like you guys are definitely there. And I love this quote. If your plan is for 1 year, plant rice. If your plan is for 10 years, plant trees. But if your plan is for 100 years, and I hope all of our plans are for 100 years, educate children. And I look forward to the conversation. I want to turn it over to somebody who's actually doing it in the workplace. So Christy, I'll log out now.
Thank you, Maggie. That was excellent. You raised so many important points that I hope we'll have time for some questions and answers following the last presentation. Do remember, everyone, to put your questions in the chat box, and we will get to those. And now we're going to hear from Michele Harris with Wellstar, who is actually offering a child care solution to their employees. Michele? We can't hear you, Michele. Very good. Thank you.
Can you hear me now? All right, great. Christy, for the sake of time, 5 minutes, 10 minutes?
You're fine. If we run over a little bit, I think everybody will do what they need to do, but we sure don't want to miss any of the important information you have to share, Michele.
Okay, awesome. So again, my name is Michele Harris. I'm with Wellstar Health System and have an incredible opportunity of overseeing all of our childcare efforts for the system. So why is this important to me? Not only do I love and I'm privileged to get to do this work for our 24,000 plus team members, I'm also a mother of 2 toddlers. So I have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. I've been married to my husband, Brent, for 10 years and have worked for all 10 years of our relationship. And, you know, Wellstar gives me an opportunity to support me as a team member and also as a mother. And I think that that's really unique in a large organization to be supported as a mom. It's refreshing, it's encouraging. And I'm incredibly passionate about childcare accessibility. My 5-year-old, you know, we started the preschool journey trying to figure out what to do, transitioning from a nanny to a preschool. You know, luckily we do have resources that a lot of people don't have resources to, but still it was even challenging as a parent that could afford to send their child where they needed to go to receive that high quality education that Maggie was talking about earlier. So just wanted to go in a few things. Megan and I had a great conversation a few weeks ago, just kind of touching and talking about some of the things that Wellstar currently does. And first I wanted to highlight, so annually we administer a trust survey to all of our team members. So this trust survey kind of gauges the engagement of the team member to not only their leader, their direct chain of command, but also executives across the organization and what that level of trust and engagement is. So there's many benefits of having a high trust culture. Of course, you think about lower turnover, better financial performance, improved safety, quality outcomes, and patient satisfaction since we're in the world of healthcare. And then specifically looking at childcare, it's part of our strategic plan, obviously to increase engagement and trust. We've heard from all these other women about these moms and dads that are having to leave the workforce based on childcare costs or not being able to find accessible childcare. And it truly breaks my heart. So one of my colleagues, Samantha Ross, oversees trust and engagement for the system. And we recently administered our survey 2 weeks ago. And she pulled a few key comments from it around childcare and how our benefits are so meaningful to our team members. So I just wanted to share a few of those before we talk about what Wellstar is actually doing for our team members and making childcare accessible. So this first comment is the management team and providers here at my office went above and beyond for me. I am forever grateful at the flexibility, temporarily working remotely, that they allowed me to have due to COVID and having children going to school online. As a single parent with a child with severe medical conditions, I was in a dilemma that could have been very challenging and frightening for myself and children being home alone. The work-life balance and consideration of myself as well as others as a person and not just an employee was proven with how I'm still able to work for Wellstar and support my children and keep them safe. This is why Wellstar is a great place to work. They truly care about their employee and the community as a whole. I think that's such a beautiful comment just to hear from a team member and a single mom. The next comment is this company has provided backup care when my child's school was not in session, which helped me from having to call out of work if I could not find childcare. And then Wellstar goes above and beyond to give benefits to team members considering their life outside of work. Example, offering reimbursement for childcare during COVID, which we'll talk about in just a moment. This made me extremely proud of my Wellstar. So just some comments really talking specific to these COVID-y times, but also in general. So really quickly, we have been on the Working Mother Top 100 Companies list for 12 years running now. And I feel that a large part in this is because of how we support childcare efforts and our team members and parents. So I wanted to kind of spend just a little bit of time in our everyday childcare offerings, and then how we were truly able to pivot once COVID hit and how we could support our team members more. So just really quickly, we have a great relationship with Bright Horizons. They have been partners of ours since 2008. We started with backup care programs, and then in 2013, we introduced center-based programs, and then in 2014, still through Bright Horizons, we introduced tuition reimbursement for our team members. And this all kind of came about. Luckily, our account representative at Bright Horizons has been there for quite some time, so she had a lot of research from back in 2008. And she told me that there was a growing concern about absenteeism, and this was in 2008, let's keep in mind. As a result of lack of childcare options when people's primary care fell through, especially with regards to closures of schools. The centers have been available for a while, but only served part of the population. So providing additional and equitable support for team members who did not use two centers was really important as well. So we do have on-site childcare centers at 3 of our locations. The buildings are owned by Wellstar, but they're operated and managed by Bright Horizons. And one interesting statistic, Megan actually forced me to look this up, and I was really shocked to see that 2/3 of our team members that enroll their children at our centers make less than $36.06 an hour. So that's a large population of these team members that we're making this accessible as we subsidize heavily those monthly costs. We do offer backup adult and child care. So each team member that's benefits eligible receives 80 hours of this backup care benefit, and they can use it in increments as they'd like for whether it's their children or for their parents if they ever need to. And it's available for center care as well as in-home care, which is really great. And we talk about why this is important for businesses to have this type of model to give affordable childcare options. In the past 12 months, Wellstar has saved $8.1 million by our backup care program usage. That's just not a total number. That is truly the days and hours used and the amount of money it's saved from absenteeism. And if we quantify it to work days, year to date, so January to, well, it was yesterday actually, Wellstar has saved close to 24,500 work days. So this is our value to Wellstar to having quality childcare, is having our team members present at work while their children are safe at home or in a center. We offer benefits for special needs children, and then we have all sorts of different preferred enrollments with Bright Horizons, in network centers, memberships to Sitter City, to college nanny and tutors, and then we do offer free tutoring and test prep as well. So then COVID hit, right? And we completely pivoted our approach to ensure team members were able to come to work and care for our patients, right? So we're in healthcare. I think maybe it was Maggie that mentioned, or Mindy, that 65% of jobs are not able to complete at home, right? I would say that percentage is even higher for Wellstar, since we have clinical folks that are taking care of patients, most likely you or your family members, and they have to be at the bedside. So we implemented crisis care through Bright Horizons. So through our backup care network, providers they weren't available, right, due to the beginning of the crisis, and people were scared to go outside of their homes. So we reimbursed team members $100 a day for them to find their own childcare. So whether that was a neighbor, if that was, maybe a retired parent, or, a church friend, something along those lines. And at least, sure, you still have to find the care, but at least the financial aspect of Wellstar giving you that extra $100 at least offsets the financial pain of finding additional childcare. Our program ran 2 months from March to May, and we invested $2.9 million to support our team members for the backup care that we offered. So really incredible. We created a toolkit for our team members to provide emotional, physical, and childcare resources. This was promoted multiple times, and just kind of gathered everything for that holistic picture of how do we take care of our team members at home, how do we take care of our team members and their children, how do we talk to our children about COVID and what's going on. We developed a COVID hotline for team members to call any array of childcare issues or COVID issues. We forged a relationship with the YMCA for the First Responders Camp. I'm sure some of you heard of that at the beginning of the COVID times. We then grew a further relationship with the YMCA, and we offered, for the first part of the school year, YMCA came on site to our locations and facilitated virtual learning for our team members, and we subsidized that. We also had decreased enrollment in our childcare centers. So we flipped those open spots to school-age spots, and we have enrollment of school-age children in our childcare centers still to this day, and we offer a significant subsidy. So being considerate of and aware of team members' financial barriers to quality childcare, we're still offering subsidies for team members based on their hourly rate at our childcare centers. And to date, so since the beginning of school started in, what was that, August, we've subsidized $18,000 for team members that are utilizing virtual learning support. So we know the importance of taking care of not only the team member, but also their family. And I really think that COVID has shown us how much our families and our work lives integrate, right? We've always talked about this work-life balance, but how many of us have been on a Zoom call or a video chat and your dog walks across your screen or your kid runs out from behind you, right? It's really normalized things and made it okay for us to be moms, for us to be pet owners, and other things go on in life. So it's incredibly meaningful to have the backing of the Wellstar executive leadership team that understands and supports what team members need to have while taking care of their families while they're at work. So just really wanted to share how this looks and plays out in real life. And I took 11 minutes, so I apologize, but thank you guys so much.
Michele, thank you. Wow, 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 wow. What an example of a company who really cares for the employees. And, you know, these hospitals have 24-hour shifts and they need people there available to care for their patients around the clock, which is an area that we really need to zero in on is that care for non-traditional hours. There's such a huge need for that, a huge unmet need. And as we as a group advocate for those unmet needs, it's great that we have this forum to be mindful of that. So I'm looking at the chat box, and there has been a request for something that we could have, Michele, with your subsidy and benefits listed, just as an example to be able to share. Wellstar's really set the bar high, and we want to share that, right, Mindy? That's great research for other companies to see and model. So if there's something you could provide, that would be really helpful, and we'll make sure to get it out to everyone. We are just about right at 11 o'clock. All of our presenters did such a phenomenal job of presenting. I think our heads are all swimming with all of this data and just the amazement of the research that's being done to really get a handle on the need, as well as some innovative resources and solutions. And also the work that still needs to be done, as Maggie said, which is just so true. So I will pass back to Jack if there aren't any more questions. And we thank you on behalf of the Child Wellbeing Committee. We thank our 4 panelists, and we thank everyone who joined us this morning to learn more about this need.
Thank you, Christy, and thank you all for your presentation. I mean, it was incredible. For those of you who know, my day job is at the Metro Atlanta Chamber. I didn't realize it was going to be such an advertisement for my colleagues, and I watched the video thinking, where was I that day that the cameras were there? But the first time I heard Mindy and Stephanie talk at a chamber event and talk about language nutrition, I knew that there was an aspect of childcare that many of us didn't understand. And so I'm just thrilled that they were here to be able to talk to us today. And Maggie, I've been a fan of CDA ever since the first time I heard of it. And you personally, you're doing such a great job. And Michele, thank you so much for the work that you did and the anecdotal information as well as the facts. That was just so helpful for us to make the case. I'm really looking forward to circulating this video. Christy, did any questions come up in the chat since we have a minute?
No other questions, just lots of praise and the desire for some of this information for sharing purposes.
Good. Obviously, to for us to have this as one of our first fireside chats that we've had as an organization is a testimony to how important we think it is. Quality childcare obviously impacts employment in the short term and community well-being in the long term. So it is so important that we understand what this means. We will be taking December off for fireside chats. People are probably exhausted, but I don't think January is going to be much different. So in January, we'll be talking about affordable housing and what impact that has on the community and financial vulnerability in North Fulton. With that, I will thank you all again for participating. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving and a great holiday, and stay safe, everyone.